Okay, so does this sound like you? You love NPR's podcasts, you wish you could get more of all your favorite shows, and you want to support NPR's mission to create a more informed public. If all that sounds appealing, then it is time to sign up for the NPR Plus bundle. Learn more at plus.npr.org.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. It's 2025, baby, and a lot of us are getting started on our New Year's resolutions. And according to Pew, 79% of New Year's resolutions are about one thing: health. But there are so many different aspects to our health, and it's hard to separate fact, fiction, and fad. We're kicking off 2025 with a little series called New Year, New Me. We're getting into some of the big questions and cultural confusion around our health and wellness. This week, for our final installment of New Year, New Me, we're diving into a new skincare trend that truly astounded me: beef tallow. It's basically beef fat that's been rendered down from suet. And I've been seeing videos of people slathering it on their faces.
I use one product and one product only, and that is beef tallow.
You can't eat your skincare, you should not be putting it on your face.
Now, I wasn't sure if it was just me seeing this, so I went out on the street to see what the public knows about beef tallow as skincare and whether they try it. Have you heard of this trend of people moisturizing their faces with beef tallow?
Oh, no. I have a few friends who use it and they rave about it. I've not used it myself. I'm a vegetarian and I don't use animal product or byproduct.
If it works, I like the downside of it being an animal fat or whatever, I will still use it. I don't care.
Now, it seems like some of the people who use it love it, and I'm not going to knock that. But one of my guests today just might.
I think my reaction was twofold. I was like, okay, this makes sense. But then I was immediately like, oh no, please no.
That was Marie Claire senior beauty editor Samantha Hollander. I sat down with her and beauty journalist Jennifer Sullivan.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
To understand why the beef tallow trend has taken off, what it says about what we value in our skincare, and whether we should be using beef tallow at all. Okay, so first I want to know, when did you start seeing beef tallow skincare on the rise?
I mean, I'm chronically online. And I saw like a few rogue videos, but it wasn't until the Nara Smith of it all that I think it really blew up. Do you know Nara Smith?
I do know Nara Smith, but for those who don't, she's a Mormon influencer on social media who makes a lot of her own stuff like from scratch. And she's one of the most popular trad wives for sure.
She wasn't the face. It was her husband, Lucky. Lucky was making his own moisturizer in the kitchen to a Nara voiceover, and they threw beef tallow in there.
He combined some beef tallow and beeswax in a metal bowl and let that melt over some boiling water.
And I feel like that was really the video that catapulted the beef tallow trend.
See, I feel like I've been seeing it like in the last 2 years or so since the pandemic, and there was such an interest in skincare then. And then when the homesteading movement sort of came about online. But I would also say it's even in other countries, I've seen it earlier. Like a facialist I know who's in Australia mentioned that that's been around for at least 10 years. But the social trend and the way that it's popped off recently, yeah, I would say in the last year or so.
That lines up with what I kind of have observed on social media. I will say I got into it because like on TikTok, I loved watching this Black American woman living in Ireland, like in the countryside. She's constantly making tallow cakes. I think eventually she would make them into soap. So I could just watch her make these like in a crock pot in her kitchen.
It's so soothing, right?
It's so soothing. And she had like the loveliest personality. And I was just like, oh my God. But yeah, I did notice kind of like the rise of tallow along with the rise of kind of like this homesteader on the range type of aesthetic that has also made its way across social media. But we'll get into more of that later. First, I want to throw out a theory that I have about why beef tallow is getting so popular. I think like the rise of K-beauty, which we've discussed on this show before. K-beauty, it's like this huge beauty industry coming out of Korea. But they really set a standard for having like these 5, 10, 12-step skincare routines. And me, myself, personally, I mean, I was bought in hook, line, and sinker, baby. I was doing so many things to my face.
Really?
And I have to say, it looked good. But I do feel like it was the norm for a lot of those products that people were putting on their faces, like sometimes twice a day, every single day, is they sometimes had a lot of like acids or other things that could be kind of harsh on the skin. I kind of think that like maybe this is kind of like a boomerang moment where people have reached kind of a saturation point with doing these intense multi-step skincare routines and now kind of want something simple, quote unquote natural, and also like is not going to burn off part of their skin barrier.
I think there's two reasons for that boomerang. One is skincare and beauty products have sort of gone the way of fashion. So we're used to these boomerang trend cycles with fashion, and we're starting to see that a little bit in beauty because it's following the same way. The other is sort of what you mentioned with the skin barrier. When everybody was using all of these products, they were introducing a lot of foreign substances. Foreign sounds negative, but I just mean things they hadn't used before. So their skin barriers were reacting, whether it was an acid or maybe it's just like, okay, you're using 3 things. That's introducing so many more ingredients that your skin hasn't been used to that you just might have like an irritation to. So people I remember it was like 2019, I wrote this whole story about how people were messing up their skin barriers with all of the 10-step beauty. And I was already starting to see some pushback towards a simpler type of routine. We were primed to sort of chill out on that. The pandemic threw a wrench in that whole thing because then it was like, well, we're staring at ourselves on Zoom all day. But now that that's settled down, I think that boomerang is really just coming in, like you said. It was too complicated and we want it to be simpler. And we also want to have our skin chill out because maybe it was a little irritated.
I see you nodding, Samantha.
I mean, I absolutely agree. I think there's also like this element of the attention economy, and we're bombarded with different TikTok trends that we are treating like fast fashion. And are we skin cycling today? Are we double cleansing today? Like, what is the trend of the moment? And it's basically a rebellion of, I don't want to hear any of it. I'm going to stick to my one ingredient product that's going to do my face, body, hair, toes, and the skin on my elbow. And there's the one and done idea.
It's seductive, to think that you can just go to the store and get one thing. Another thing that I'm seeing here is that there's a real premium on beef tallow being perceived as natural. I saw a couple TikToks where one woman ate some of it and was like, if you can't eat it, you shouldn't put it on your skin, which I just want to do a sidebar. That's like not necessarily a doctor recommended line of thinking. I just want to be clear about that. And there was another woman I saw on TikTok who said that she liked that there were just a couple ingredients basically in a beef tallow skin product that she was using, and she could pronounce all of them and she knew where they came from. Why is there such a premium on skincare that's quote unquote natural or pure? Jennifer, I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, I have so many reasons for this one. I think it's confusing for a lot of people to look at a skincare ingredient list right now. Those are long names, they're chemical names, but just because they're hard to pronounce and maybe you don't have experience with them does not mean they're unsafe. So that's one thing. The other thing I think a little bit is just mistrust in general of corporations and government. I mean, we've seen in like study after study that Americans are less trustful of corporations. And I think part of that reason is because, we don't feel that we always have control over our healthcare choices, and skin is part of healthcare. So it feels nice to think of something as natural. That said, there's also studies showing like certain ingredients that have historically been used in cosmetic products are not great for your skin. The FDA bans, I believe, about a dozen now. In the EU, it's about 1,200. And say what you will about these lists, and experts will say a lot because some of these ingredients aren't even used in skincare. But that makes people scared. Like when you hear there's a list of 1,200 things in the EU that people aren't allowed to use in cosmetics,
Yeah.
you're like, what are they?
Samantha, any thoughts you want to add?
Yeah, I think one important call out is that like the word natural, or in beef tallow's case, grass-fed, or all of these buzzwords, there's no regulation. Anyone can slap that on a label.
Really?
Tallow that you're buying from TikTok Shop is not going through the FDA. They can write whatever they want on this label. It's kind of like the greenwashing movement from a few years back. There's no real definition for clean. There's no, when we say natural, yes, it's coming from a cow, but it's almost the same logic of, would you put poison ivy on your face? Would you put poison oak on your face? Like, that's natural. That's from the ground. Does it belong on your face? Probably not. I'm certainly not doing it. So I think that the idea of something coming from the ground is very appealing. There's safety in knowing that I know exactly what is going on my face. But I think that there's a lot of confusion in the ether when everyone with a microphone can be considered an expert. And just because it has 5 million views on TikTok or 700,000 likes on Instagram, that doesn't mean that this is a trustworthy source.
Okay, so I wonder, are there legitimate reasons to be skeptical of commercial skincare products?
Historically, yes. I mean, there's things like talc that might have asbestos contamination that we no longer use in certain ways, triclosan, certain formaldehydes in hair relaxers, for example. Over the course of like the last 100 years of modern cosmetics, we found a couple of things that are really bad. But generally speaking, most of the ingredients used in cosmetic products have a huge safety record. They've been around for a while. And it's true, our FDA here in the US does not test products. I don't know if people know this, but they don't test products before they come to market. There's no like, hey, we gave this to FDA, they said it's safe, now we're selling it to you. It's just not how our government is set up.
I didn't know that. Okay.
No, you are free to sell a product. You have to show that it's safe, but you don't have to show it to the government. You just have to have that information should something happen. Drugs are different, obviously, and some acne products over the counter are considered over-the-counter drugs, so that would be different. But with cosmetic skincare, no.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, there are some ingredients that have been in skincare or beauty products that have led to some scary headlines. I mean, you know, some dry shampoo was recently voluntarily recalled over potential cancer risk. Phthalates are in some skincare products, and those can disrupt the endocrine system. And so I can understand how then, you know, if you're coming across a lot of this news and also thinking about how to keep yourself healthy and safe, it could potentially feel like there's so much harm out there in the skincare industry that, you know, I just need to go into my kitchen and render this beef tallow down. Coming up, what do we know about beef tallow? And should we use it?
The ingredients are there. It is going to moisturize your skin. That being said,
stick around.
This message comes from Wise, the app for doing things in other currencies. Sending or spending money abroad? Hidden fees may be taking a cut. With Wise, you can convert between up to 40 currencies at the mid-market exchange rate. Visit wise.com. T&Cs apply.
Donald Trump is starting his second term as president. What will his administration do, and what policies will it promote? On the NPR Politics Podcast, we'll break down what the new administration does and explain why it matters. Listen to the NPR Politics Podcast every day.
Usher, Yo-Yo Ma, Boy Genius, Shaka Khan, Billie Eilish, Weird Al. One thing all these big stars have in common, they've all played behind NPR's Tiny Desk. And if you enter NPR's Tiny Desk contest between now and February 10th, you could be next. Unsigned musicians can find out more and see the official rules at npr.org/tinydeskcontest.
The Indicator is a podcast where daily economic news is about what matters to you.
Workers have been feeling the sting of inflation.
So as a new administration promises action on the cost of living, taxes, and home prices,
the S&P 500 biggest post-election day spike ever.
Follow all the big changes and what they mean for you.
Make America affordable again.
Listen to The Indicator, the daily economics podcast from NPR.
I see similar mistrust in our consumer products in other areas, like in the Make America Healthy Again movement, which if you didn't know, RFK Jr. has beef tallow merch on his website, which I find very interesting. We also see it in the growing movement against ultra-processed foods.
I think there's so much fear around what we're putting in and on our bodies right now. And there's constantly a recall, or should we be doing this? Should we not be doing this? We're just left with so many questions about what's best for us, quote unquote.
Okay, so let's get into it. What are the possible benefits and possible harms of beef tallow as skincare? Like, what do we know and what do we not know?
I mean, on its face, beef tallow has lipids. It has vitamins. The ingredients are there. It is going to moisturize your skin. That being said, A, it stinks. Has anyone smelled beef tallow?
Ones I've smelled are just they're just fatty. They don't smell like beef or cow.
Oh my God, Jen, I've smelled some questionable beef tallow. I have a very heightened sense of smell. And yeah, the smell was not for me. B is it's completely unstabilized. So it's natural, yes, but when we go and buy skincare at the store, there are preservatives in those products that ensure their shelf stability and their shelf life. Beef tallow, 100% natural beef tallow, does not have any of that in it. So you can introduce bacteria. Let's say you get a little water in it after you wash your face. And there's a reason that we have science and there's a reason that we have labs. And to ignore all of that, to me, seems so crazy.
The possible benefits are the vitamin profile is great. The fatty acids are great. The other thing I have to point out just about this preservatives thing is when something is just fats or just oils, even if it's commercially made, you don't necessarily need preservatives because bacteria grow in anything with water, as Sam alluded to. That said, animals are full of bacteria. And if it's not purified correctly and manufactured in a way that is tested for purity and maybe just made in someone's backyard, you might already have bacteria in that product before it even comes to you. So that's a little bit nerve-wracking as well.
What gets me about this is that it's kind of being sold as this miracle treatment that is in some ways responding to a real fear that people have, of lab-created chemicals that could be harmful potentially. But it seems like it's trading on an idea that things used to be so much better when we didn't have science and everything was quote unquote natural. But back in the day, people put lead in their makeup. Mercury used to be a treatment for acne. These are both pretty dangerous things for people, but they're both elements that occur naturally and come from the earth. It's almost like the good old days that some people want to harken back to. Maybe they didn't actually exist. And science is actually the thing that's helped us avoid a lot of harm from our cosmetics and skincare products.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of irony in this whole discussion because it's like in an effort to be safer and avoid all of these chemicals, as we've said, is kind of the discourse. People are going this more quote unquote natural route with their beef tallow, but there's a whole other host of safety issues that you're introducing by doing that. And people are completely neglecting to see the many great alternatives on the market that are affordably priced, where you can understand every ingredient that's on the back of the label. And they also come with the safety testing and the standardization and that kind of regulation that you would want from a product. So, you can go to the drugstore, you can buy a $10 moisturizer that has been clinically tested in a lab, evaluated for efficacy, has the same level of concentration of ingredients in every single product that you're getting, which is not something you're going to get with beef tallow.
I think the reason beauty products are part of the conversation first and foremost, besides food maybe being the other one, is because they're so intimate. Like, you're putting lotion on your naked skin. And maybe you don't think as much about the chemicals that might be in the paint on your walls or the packaging that your new purse came in or the purse itself for that matter. Because, you're just carrying it around. But there's something about your skin is, porous. You're in an intimate act when you put on cosmetics and skincare. And that makes you especially primed to be fearful of these quote unquote toxins.
Samantha, Jennifer, thank you both so much. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Marie Claire Senior Beauty Editor Samantha Hollander and beauty journalist Jennifer Sullivan. And before we go, I want to say a big thank you. If you were one of the listeners who answered the call in the last month and supported our show by signing up for NPR Plus, I see you all. You make me so very happy. That support is so important to keeping our show going. So thank you. And if you've heard about NPR Plus but aren't supporting us yet, it's really easy to sign up. It takes maybe 20 seconds. Just go to plus.npr.org. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Liam McBain.
This episode was edited by
Jasmine Romero.
Our executive producer is
Verilyn Williams.
Our VP of programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
On the Embedded podcast from NPR, what is it like to live under years of state surveillance?
So many people have fear of losing their families.
For years, the Chinese government has been detaining hundreds of thousands of ethnic Uyghurs. This is the story of one family torn apart. Listen to The Black Gate on the Embedded podcast from NPR. All episodes are available now.
Consider This is a daily news podcast, and lately, the news is about a big question. How much can one guy change?
They want change.
What will change look like for energy?
Drill, baby, drill.
Schools?
Take the Department of Education, close it.
Healthcare?
Better and less expensive.
Follow coverage of a changing country.
Promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises.
On Consider This, the afternoon news podcast from NPR.
What's in store for the music, TV, and film industries for 2025? We don't know, but we're making some fun, bold predictions for the new year. Listen now to the Pop Culture Happy Hour podcast from NPR.